And I'll position it.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Chai and Storytelling with me, Bella. I'm so glad that you're joining me today. I am live streaming from my kitchen in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. For those of you who don't know me, I am an artist, writer, and a storyteller. I am inspired by my East Indian roots, growing up in the West, all things creative, travel, and the power of human connection. My parents were born and raised in Rajasthan, India, in small villages, and then later moved to Mumbai. I was born in Africa, Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, and when I was a baby, we immigrated from Africa to London, and then from London to the United States, where I've lived for my whole life. I grew up oceans away from my family and my culture and felt quite disconnected from my roots, which is what brings me here to the kitchen, showing you and teaching you all how to make chai. It was chai, my mom making chai when I was a small girl in our kitchen. I've loved it ever since then. And the art of henna, which many of you know, but some of you don't, inspires my hand-drawn art that you just saw, which was my moon tree. I borrow from the patterns of henna, which is an ancient art form where you decorate the hands, usually done for weddings, but now it's become more mainstream. But henna and chai, those were the two things as a young girl far, far away from my family that really made me know that I had a home that was far away and belonged to a culture that was far away. And it created a yearning in me, which I later grew. I later went to India to sort of figure out what my roots were all about, which brought me to my art and to the making of chai as a way to curate stories. So for me, chai is it's an ancient drink. It's one of the oldest in history. It's mystical and enchanting. The smells, you can't help but feel at home when you're drinking chai, and it's just a way for each of us to get to know each other and to share each other's stories and learn about each other's past, present, and our future hopes and dreams. So I'm going to get started. Hopefully some of you are going to make chai along with me. For those of you who don't have the ingredients, they're posted on the website and you can look at the ingredients, and then hopefully just this will be live, and those are cardamom pods, whole cardamom pods that you're seeing now. So I keep mine in a jar like this because I make chai almost daily. So we're going to use the cardamom pods for the chai. Then the other ingredients are fresh ginger, which is you just buy ginger root, and you'll see that you don't have to peel it or anything. You can just use the ginger root. And then you need milk. For those of you, any kind of milk is good. You can do whole milk, 2% milk, 1% milk, 0% milk. It's really up to you what you want. You'll notice the texture of the chai will be different depending on the milk. For those of you who are dairy-free, you can use unsweetened almond milk or you can try different forms of milk. The one thing is that what happens with anything that has any kind of milk that has a flavor or a slightly different texture, it's going to change the flavor of the chai. So it won't be quite the same as traditional chai. The best milk that I've found to make the chai as close to drinking it as if you were drinking it with regular milk is the unsweetened almond milk. So that's why I have it here. So let's get started. I'm excited. So what I normally do, it's pretty, so one thing about the way I make chai is I don't measure. I sort of measure, kind of measure. I'm going to try to measure for all of you so that when you're making it yourself, you can decide for yourself how to do it. So what I normally do is I pick my favorite coffee cup or tea mug, and I fill it with water. So I've already filled these with water. And then I'm going to just show you. These are Indian pots that I got from India and brought back with me. There's multiple sizes. I don't know if you can tell that. So however many cups, if you're making a cup of chai for just yourself or one other person, you just need a small pot. And obviously, the more chai you're making, the bigger the pot. And one thing you have to keep in mind is that when you make the chai, you're going to be adding milk at the end. So it's going to be more liquid in the pot than when you start. So make sure that you think about that when you're making more cups of chai than just 1 or 2. We're going to start with we're going to use the smaller pot. And what you do is you just fill your mug with water. I'm going to make chai for 2. So I'm going to pour in 2 cups, which is not technically cups, but 2 mugs of water into my pot. Now, normally this would be on the stove, which is behind me, which you'll see later in the show. But just for purposes of making this easier, I'm going to put the pot in front of me, which you can't see, or maybe I'll put it over here. So bear with me as we go through. Yeah, if we go lower. So then what I do is, since I'm making 2 cups of chai, and this is the part that I don't measure. Hopefully you all have a mortar and pestle. Mortar and pestles come in all sizes and shapes. So I like the smaller ones. It's easier to use with your hands. So you can, but it doesn't matter. I have a huge one over on my shelf that sometimes I use if I can't find this one. So it doesn't matter. And if you don't have a mortar and pestle, you just have to find a way to mash up the ginger. Sometimes I've used a grater to do it if I've been at somebody's house and they don't have a mortar and pestle. So you can do that too. So what you want to do first is chop the ginger after you put the water in the bowl. Can you all see that? Okay. So what you're going to do is, you don't have to peel the ginger. You just chop it. And this is where I don't measure. So what I do, and you take the pieces with the peel on, and you just pound it. Sorry, it's gonna be a little loud as we do this. So it's just fresh ginger, and ginger lasts a long time. So I keep my ginger in the refrigerator, and it can last a really long time. So it's great for many things. Oops. For many of you who don't know, so I just pounded up some ginger in my mortar and pestle. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in, well, first I'm going to measure for you all so we can sort of, you guys can have some measurements, even though I would normally not do this. So this is about, what I just did here is about 1/4 of a cup of ginger, give or take a little bit less than that. And then what I do is I put it into the water. And when I eyeball it, it doesn't look like enough to me for 2 cups of chai. So I'm going to cut up a little bit more ginger. Now, the thing about my chai that a lot of people, many of you who have had it and many of you who have not, I hope that there's new people to this broadcast so that you're all learning something new and traveling to India with me. But my chai is more ginger forward than maybe some other chais that you might have. And that's the cool thing. You know, one of the things about being an immigrant, and I think it's actually true of all of us and why I believe so strongly in storytelling, is everybody's story is so unique. And in the same way that everybody cooks slightly differently. So you might have your mother, your grandmother's favorite chocolate chip cookie recipe, but you might do something just a little different that makes it just a little bit special so that your kids know, or your family knows, or your loved ones or your friends know that it's your recipe and not your mom's, just an alteration. So even my chai recipe is slightly different than the way my mom makes her chai. And one of the things is I tend to put more, and my chai is a little different than all of my Indian friends and even in India. Now, and one of the things is I tend to use more fresh ginger. So I'm going to pound up some more fresh ginger. The other thing is, many of you, people always say, I love chai, but they've never had traditional chai. They've had Starbucks chai or some other chai from a coffee shop. And it's important to note that while that might be really great, and it's not, I don't like it because it doesn't taste as authentic, but it's super sweet, and it's sweet in a different way. You'll see, we're going to add sugar to this chai, but you get to decide how sweet. But it's too sweet for me, and what happens is I think it actually takes away from the really strong and beautiful flavors of traditional chai. So it is different to make your own chai or have traditional authentic chai, somebody who is Indian or an Indian restaurant. So let's see how much more I put in here. And this is the fun thing, is you guys can all experiment and take your time everybody, you'll all come to a different place about how much ginger you want in your chai. For some of you, this will be too much, and for some of you, it'll be perfect. And for some of you, you might decide you want a little bit more. So we're going to put, this is about, if you can see, it's not even, not a cup more of ginger. So we're going to add that. And then I sometimes stir it up. I feel like it needs a little bit more ginger. And I don't know if I can just show it to you why. Just seems a little empty in there. So I feel like I want to fill it with a little bit more ginger. So that's what I'm going to do. So bear with me. I'm going to cut up a little bit more. And we'll do this together. And the fun thing about this is that the other thing I always encourage people to do is smell all the spices. Ginger has a really strong smell, and it's something that is used in all kinds of cooking, so it's not going to be unfamiliar to you. But anytime you're making any, it's really good to smell it because it gives you a better sense of kind of what smell enhances flavor and vice versa. If you don't like a smell, you're probably not going to like the flavor. So then this is about the same amount that I put in before, a little bit less than half of a fourth, so an eighth. So I'm going to put it in there, and I think we're good to go. So that's how much ginger is in there. And then what I do is, this is where I do measure. So these are my whole cardamom pods. And I do, so if I'm making 2 cups of chai, I use 3 tea bags, black tea bags. And then for each tea bag, I do 4 cardamom pods. So I count. So that's 1, 2, let's see if you can see. So yeah, here we go. So we'll just make some room. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's for 1 tea bag. Then another 4 cardamom pods for the second tea bag. And then another 4 cardamom pods for the third tea bag. So remember that none of this is an exact science. You get to kind of play with it and have fun with it. The other thing to know about cardamom pods is that you can actually grind them up. And this is how my mom used to make chai, is she would, you can buy ground up cardamom. So you can either buy ground cardamom or you can crush it yourself. You could leave the pod, but you can crush it. And by crushing it, I don't know if you can see, but when you crush it, it has these little black seeds in it. So you can either put the black seeds in that way. I don't like my chai with the cardamom crushed because it gives it too strong of a cardamom flavor for me. But this is something you can experiment with, and you can buy cardamom already crushed. So remember that there's different ways to do it. And like I said, my mom used to make it and have the ground cardamom. A lot of Indian people also make chai with masala, which is already a spice. It's a powdered spice that you can buy pre-made from the Indian grocery store. Again, I think this is the freshest. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the cardamom, that's 12 cardamom pods. I'm making 2 cups of chai, 4 per tea bag. So that goes in with the ginger. And then, of course, I forgot to grab the tea bags. So I'm going to grab them now. And I just I'll show you. I'm going to step out of the frame one more time, so bear with me. I'm coming right back. Sorry about that. Okay, so here is the, I just buy Lipton black tea bags. It's really important not to buy any flavored black tea bags, because if you buy flavored, it's going to interfere with the spices with the cardamom and the ginger and the sugar, and you won't get the same traditional chai flavor. So whatever you do, if Lipton's not your thing, then you can buy any kind of black tea. Just make sure it's not flavored. The thing to note about black tea, though, is that a lot of them do have a slight flavor. So again, this is preference. Some people like Earl Grey black tea. Some people like English breakfast. Some people like Lipton. It's a slightly different flavor. It's kind of like coffee. You know, everybody has their preference on what kind of coffee they like. So you might want to experiment with your tea bags and which ones. But if any of you have had my tea, then this is what I use. So then what you do, you always want to make sure that you take the paper off. You can keep the string on. Some people also do tea bags, or they do loose tea. I don't like loose tea very much, so I don't know why. So I think this actually reminds me of my mom. She made tea with this exact tea bag. So it's what I grew up on, it's what I know, and it's my comfort, it's my home. So that's why I use this. So just make sure you take off the paper. So you do 3 tea bags for 2 cups. The reason, it just gives you that little extra caffeine and then balances out the spices against the other spices, the ginger and the cardamom. So again, all of this is, you can experiment and decide for yourself what works and what doesn't. But this is how I did it. So after that, you put, I don't know if you can get a good look in here, but you can see that's the tea bags, the cardamom, and the ginger. So normally this would just be on the stove, but I'm going to come over here and we're going to, actually, you could just stay there. We're just going to light it. I don't know if you can see, but I'm going to light my stove, and then what you do is you let it boil. And so I'm going to let it boil and just talk to you guys for a little bit. And you might want to just stir it, which is not a big deal. And what you could do is you just want to let it boil. And what we're going to do is wait for the water to boil. As soon as the water starts to boil, we're going to add milk. And again, I don't measure, but I'm going to bring my measuring cups over here so I remember. But I'll show you kind of how to eyeball it. I do it by the way that the color of the tea is kind of how I know when I've had enough, when I've put enough milk in there. So I don't know if any of you know, but ginger, I wrote a story about ginger, and it was based on, I did some, well, I've known about ginger for a long time, and then talked to my really dear friend Rima, who works with sort of Ayurvedic medicine, and then just looked up sort of folklore about ginger and wrote a story. So I thought I would read you, it's a blog I wrote, and it's called The Medicine Chest. Ginger, whispers of ancient history and never forgotten folklore, of faraway lands and fishermen lost at sea, of healing the body and feeding the soul. Ginger, the root of all ages, for ancient and modern times, for here and now. Ginger, for energy and balance, for clarity and strength, for wellness and healing. Ginger is said to be an entire medicine chest in and of itself, a well-known remedy for travel sickness, nausea, indigestion, and it also removes toxins, relieves joint pain, and can help fight the flu, alleviate coughing, and so much more. Every morning, I arrive in my kitchen to find this super spice waiting for me, a root from the earth, fresh and full of promise for the new day. Peppery and slightly sweet, I cut, crush, and add this holiest of spices to the water on the stove. I give it time to mix with the other ingredients, to share its wisdom and lift them up. And when it is done, I take this wisdom and pour a cup of tea, one that relaxes the mind and warms the heart, one that brings creativity, love, and light. So that's my tribute to ginger. If any of you are cooking along with me, you're probably starting to smell the fragrance of the spices, the ginger and the cardamom, and you kind of start to hear it crackle and the tea bags go. So you want to just kind of keep it up high, and maybe we'll bear with us and we'll bring the camera over so you can kind of see what's happening. But you can start to smell it. The whole kitchen smells like ginger and cardamom and black tea, and it's like a whole kitchen full of yumminess. So the other really thing to note about chai that just always warms my heart is in England, where we grew up, I was there until I was 8. But in India, you drink chai not just in the morning, but in the afternoon, sometimes in the evening. It is a sacred ritual. It is a time when it's just always on, and it's a time to rest. It sort of signifies a moment to rest. And people always think it's so hot in India, why are you drinking chai? But actually, drinking warm liquids actually cools the body. So there's a lot of reasons why chai is a drink it's not just, people don't just drink it in chai, they drink it all over the Middle East, all over the Eastern world. And there's all kinds of different variations of chai, which is really fun to look into. And if you ever get a chance to go to India or even Africa, to visit a tea plantation is something really special. There are people working so hard to bring us our black tea or our flavored tea. And I always think about, for me, chai and the art of henna, which is what inspires my art. I think part of the reason I love it is it's a reminder that of all of our ancestors that came before us, of so much history and craftsmanship. And sometimes we don't honor the people that bring us the things that are the staple of our cultures and our lifestyles, because we sort of think of it as craft. This image that you're seeing, he's this man. When you travel to India, there are people called chaiwalas. They call them chaiwala, and a wala is like a man, and a chaiwala is a person selling tea, and you can see the definition. So these are two images. I just shot these in October when I was in India. The tea, you can hear the tea. If you're making it at home, you can hear it start to boil. It depends on how fast your stove boils. Mine's almost there, so we'll bring the camera over. But chaiwalas are everywhere. And when you get, when I was in India, we would take the train. You take the train in, and there are chaiwalas that are, so the photo in the bottom there is a man who has taken from the stand, has taken cups of chai and is basically selling it to anybody in the street that wants chai. And so takes it to all the workers, because one of the things, especially in a city like Mumbai, there's stalls. They're not like bricks and mortar shops. They have those too, but you'll just see stalls of people selling vegetables and clothing and toys and spices or anything you might need. And all of those people in the afternoon, in the morning, want chai. So you see chaiwalas anywhere. When you go shopping in India, you are asked if you would like chai, and they bring you chai. It's one of the most, it's one of those things about those cultures that we don't have so much in America, and that kind of like graciousness of hosting and wanting to give you food and wanting to warm your bellies as a way of saying thank you for coming into my shop. Thank you for shopping with me. Thank you for being my customer. And we don't do that as much here, and it's something I really miss and something I really hope to honor. And that's partly why I wanted to do this. And, you know, some people might think it's disconnected from my art, but it's it's what inspires my art. It's what inspires me to tell stories, is that idea that these are the ways that we connect with people, and these are the things that get lost. And it's what made me feel connected to my roots when I had no reason to be connected when I was a young girl, because we hardly ever went back, and I wasn't taught the language, and so many barriers to knowing what my history was that my parents couldn't help because of economics and geography, and they wanted a better life for me. And here I am in my kitchen getting to show you how to make chai, which is pretty amazing to me. So let's come over and check out the tea. It's boiling. I'm gonna use whole milk. I'm gonna use milk, regular milk. So I don't know if you can see. We can pull back a little bit and maybe go up high. I have so maybe come in this way. Oops, I just spilled it. So then what we're gonna do is I'm gonna pour it in. Oh, I'm gonna do this actually. Sorry, bear with me. This part I've never done before. So I'm gonna this is a 1/3 cup of milk that I'm putting in here. Oops. Sorry, folks. Okay, so I'm gonna pour 1/3 of a cup of milk in here, and it doesn't look quite enough. So can you go up high? Let's see if we can show you the color of it. So if you can look, yeah, you can get a kind of a view of it now. So like, I'm gonna add another 1/3. There we go. And then what I do is I mix it and kind of see. I'm going to add a little bit more. Actually, I added 3 1/3 cups of milk, and that looks to be about the right color. Can you guys all see that? So again, you can experiment and see how you feel about this, but that's kind of the color I'm going to leave it at. You can go lighter or darker. It's really your preference. And then what we do is we let that boil again. So We'll come back. And again, if you're using almond milk or some other substitute, you're really going to want to experiment with the flavors so that you can decide how it works together. You might need to balance it out with more ginger or more cardamom. You might want to try unsweetened or a different kind of substitute. And it's also going to change the texture. So you might need more than, what do we use? 3 1/3 cups. So you might need more than a cup. That's about a cup of milk. So you might need more than that, or you might want less. And remember, it's a cup of milk for 2 cups of chai. So for all of you who are like, that's a lot of milk, it's not really, because it's 2 cups. And it's actually going to be might be a little bit more than 2 cups, because I filled the mugs up with water. So when you add the milk, you've got a little bit more. So then what will happen is you'll see, now this is the important thing, is this starts to boil really fast, the milk does. So I don't know if you can get in here and like we'll put it on top a little bit. So yeah, if you look, this is going to go really fast. So you can't turn away from the stove when you've added the milk, because if you do turn away, it will boil over and then it's a kind of a mess. So I like to let it kind of boil, and then sometimes I'll come over here. Do you see that? Let it get almost to the top, lower it just a little bit, and then let it reboil. All that does is it's just letting the spices kind of like really dig in, make it a little bit stronger. You don't have to do that, but I kind of like to. If it boils over, it's not a big deal. It's just a pain to clean up. So let it go all the way to the top, and then we'll let it settle. And then I'm going to let us come back over to the island. And then, oh, you might want to see this. Sorry. We're going to, so this is a really fun, so you guys all, in America, you'll have a pot with a handle, most likely. With with my Indian cooking pot, I need my little utensil. So I clip on, and this is what I do with my kids, and I'll bring it over here now. Turn off the stove and bring it over, and I'll put it on my cutting board. And then what we're going to do is so remember, you have all of this stuff in it. So you have the tea bags, the ginger, the cardamom pods, and it's all in there. And of course, you don't want to drink any of that stuff. So what you want to do is use your handle, but you're going to need a strainer. These strainers you can get at the Indian grocery store, and they're everywhere. And for those of you in Milwaukee, on the No Studios registration page, there was a list of, I think I gave 3 or 4 Indian grocery stores. I tried to give you stores that were all over the city, depending on where you lived. But almost every city has Indian grocery stores, but you can get strainers. I mean, you can get them anywhere, but you can get them pretty inexpensively at Indian grocery stores. All of these spices, the Lipton tea bags, everything you can get at an Indian grocery store. Milk is there, sugar is there. So if you do find your way to an Indian grocery store, which if you've never done it, it's a pretty awesome experience. Can be intimidating, but don't be intimidated. It's crazy in there and chaotic, but also organized. It smells yummy and it's everything India is in like a little shop. You know, it gives you a really interesting, like a window into India, and people there are busy and getting their groceries, but they'll help you. And you can find almost everything, and which is also true in India. It's such a crazy place of so many possibilities, like the past, ancient times mixed in with futuristic times. And it's an Indian grocery store kind of feels like that sometimes. So then what we're going to do, and I don't know if we can push down, is this. So you put your strainer over the mug, and then you're just going to pour it in, and you're going to strain out so that what ends up in your mug is just the hot chai. And I don't know if any of you are commenting or not and asking me questions. I've decided that in order to not hurt myself and also make sure that I can really teach you guys how to do this, that it's better for me just to focus on making the chai. So I apologize if I'm not answering questions or not responding to comments. And then this is the second cup, and you'll see that we're going to have almost exactly 2 cups of chai. And it's okay if you spill or if you make a mistake. And then what I normally do is just, you'll see the rest stuff that didn't go into the strainers in the pot. And then you'll see that you can put this down. And then I'll just put this back on the stove because that's hot. So now you have your 2 cups of chai. So now in India, something important to note is that in India, they would have added the sugar. Well, nowadays, actually, when I went to India in October, my family is now adding the sugar afterwards. And I think it's interesting. We're living in times right now where the world seems so separated and we seem really far apart from each other, I think. But actually, we're so connected. And the Eastern world has influenced the Western world in so many ways. And the Western world influences the Eastern world. And so one of those influences is when I went back to India in October. And then over the last few years, they now, instead of adding sugar at the time that you would add the milk, which is how it used to be, that's how my mom used to do it, and how when we would go to India the few times when we were younger, that's what I remembered is the sugar was already in the tea. But now we add our own sugar, and I think that's a Western influence. It's sort of, they're becoming health conscious in a way that perhaps they hadn't been. Not that they weren't healthy, but it was just different. And so it's really, I think that's why travel is so important to me, and why I love sharing chai with people, because art and culture is so much about sharing of those things and how we're influenced by each other. And the only way that you can honor each other's culture and stories is by understanding how we're influenced by each other's stories and culture. I wouldn't be who I am today if I wasn't raised in the West, and I wouldn't be here with you today if my parents hadn't made the difficult decision to leave India and raise me here. And yet there was a lot lost in that I mourn for and I feel sad about. But I've come to a place in my life, and I think it's because I found art and I found this way of talking, of sharing, and so many of you have been so gracious to listen and support me. And those of you who are tuning in now are here. So it gives me a way to engage with all of you. So the moon tree is back again. And again, that's a story. I wrote a story about how important our roots are, gives us strength, our roots. And then we have our present. And then we have the moon that sort of takes us and asks us to reimagine and imagine our lives and what we hope and dream for. And I don't think you can have the moon without having your roots. I don't think you can reach for something bigger than yourself and imagine something bigger without having your roots and figuring out what that means to you, and how, whatever small ways that is or big ways. And for me, this is like one of those small ways that reminds me. And one of the greatest joys I've ever had is my daughter and my son, but my daughter especially makes me chai now. She just turned 18, and it's one of those moments where I think I've passed on a little bit of my history to my daughter, who is first generation American, born here. And it's nothing I ever thought when I was younger that would ever be my story, that I would have these young kids who would drink chai with me and learn to make it themselves. So it's how we get to pass on our ancestry to our children. And I think by doing that, we keep the things sacred that are sacred and meant to be held onto, even when the world is changing so quickly in front of us, and in ways that we don't even know what it looks like. Okay, so now for the fun part. You get to add sugar. Now don't judge me, because I really like my chai, like my sugar. So I tend to add a lot. I always keep a wood spoon with my sugar. I don't even know how much this is, probably a tablespoon. So you can just add it. Do start with like a half or one. Whenever I make it for friends or family, I really just let them start with whatever they want. And then you just taste it and you figure out what the balance is. I will tell you that if it's too spicy and it's like burning your stomach, or it feels too spicy, then you're going to want to add a little bit more sugar. The sugar helps balance out the spice. So I usually will, for mine, I know already I'm going to want a little bit more sugar. So I'm going to add a little bit more. Don't be afraid. So that's the other thing is chai. I talked about it earlier. Chai is one of those, it's a moment to sit and rest and treat yourself. We spend a lot of time in this world judging ourselves, telling ourselves we're not doing enough, not resting. We don't spend enough time talking to each other. And especially now, I think with people being forced into isolation, we can lose that. And I really think it's so important to stay connected. And one of those things is sitting down and having yourself a hot cup of tea and sharing it with somebody that you love and that is important to you. And if you have to do it over Zoom, then do it over Zoom. But if you can, there's one or two people in your life that you're quarantining with or spending time with, do it with them, because it really gives you a different way. It sort of it forces you to let your guard down. I think when you drink something that's from the heart, and when you drink something that's so ancient and full of wisdom, because somebody before us thought to put these spices together, I think it just creates a space in us where we open up in ways that we don't normally do. So I love chai for that reason. I love it because it allows me to tell stories. The other thing to do is to eat it with something. So my favorite thing, and if anybody knows me, and again, don't judge, but I'm going to brag because I really do make the best toast after chai on the planet. So buttered toast, please use salted butter. If you use unsalted butter, it's not going to taste good. So use salted butter, butter your toast luxuriously, toast it perfectly, butter it luxuriously, treat yourself. And then what you do is you take that buttered toast that's been buttered luxuriously. Ideally, your butter should be room temperature, because when the toast comes out of the toaster perfectly toasted, you want to put the butter on it immediately. And if it's soft, it'll melt into that beautiful piece of toast. And then you butter it to the edges, add a little extra butter, and then you cut it in half and you dip it in your tea and you take a bite. And it's like heaven. It's comfort food. It's food for the soul. And we just don't do enough of it. We're so concerned with and I am too, but like when you're going to treat yourself, treat yourself. If you're going to eat butter and this is your only time, do it luxuriously. Be decadent. Or just don't do it. Like if you're just like, I can't today, then save it for once a week or whatever. But the more butter, the better, because it's that salty, buttery bread in this beautiful like mix of spicy chai that will warm you up and make you feel like you've got this. You can make it through the day if you're having a bad day, and if you're having a great day, it's just sort of like icing on the cake. So that is, I don't know where we are on time. I think that's all I have. That's chai. There's a story I wrote about chai. I've already talked about it, but maybe I'll read it to you before we end. And I just am so grateful for all of you that joined me today. If you have any questions, feel free to find me on Instagram and at Bela SURESH. On Facebook, I'm Bela SURESH ROONGTA, or Bela ROONGTA it might be. My business is Bela. Remember, it's Bela with one L. If you put in Bela with two L's, you'll get a whole bunch of things that are not me. So Bela with one L. My name is actually pronounced Bela in Hindi. My parents, when we immigrated, people could not pronounce the name Bela. And so, which is crazy because now everybody is named Bela, and a lot of dogs and cats also. But it's Bela, and it's spelled Bela, and it means flowery vine in Hindi. So that's also partly why I named my business Bela, because my art is inspired by the flowery patterns of henna. So I'm going to leave you with this final story. I've already mentioned many of these things, but it sort of puts it all together and why I love chai. Mystical and enchanting. Oftentimes, I find inspiration in the smallest of moments that I have experienced hundreds of times. This morning, I shared one of those moments, as I have done so many times since they were young, making chai with Samara and Rana. Mystical and enchanting, homemade chai brings me home to my roots and gives me a sense of belonging. This is at the heart of my art and storytelling. One of the oldest drinks in history, chai, steeped in tradition, warms the belly and the heart. It invites us to sit, rest, and tell our story, to share the moments of our lives, big and small, and to find the beauty in each other's stories. It is this quiet and beauty between your story and mine that we will find when we travel back to India together and enjoy a cup of homemade chai. So thank you guys so much for joining. Take care. I hope that your chai is as yummy as mine. And let's, when all this is over and we can gather again, invite me into your kitchen and let's have chai together. Or you can come to mine. Okay, thanks everybody. Thanks No Studios for hosting me. If you haven't had a chance, check out their website. They're a pretty amazing organization, doing great things and about to do even greater things. So, and check out my website, belasuresh.com. I'm going to be, I've just launched a new website, and I'm going to be launching t-shirts and going back to some, and I have new art up. So check out what I'm doing. I think all the links are on the registration and on the blog that No Studios did about me. So thanks everybody.